Hi, and welcome back to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller, our podcast show where we try to dive deep into the stuff of life, trying to live with purpose and courage and navigating all the ups and downs of everyday life and the big questions. It is great to be back with you. Today's episode is a little bit different and it's inspired by something that is not normally my cup of tea. Now, I know as I'm about to say that I'm about to draw people into a big old opinion. I have been surrounded by Middle Earth ever since starting to date my husband. He loves Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And that means, excuse me, I'm going to have to do a little cough. He loves Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and that means all our boys have grown up with this. They've had all of them read to them, and it is a big part of our life. I'm not so much a fantasy person, so it hasn't really been my thing. I have watched them all. I've watched The Hobbits, I've watched The Lord of the Rings, but I've never read them, and maybe I should. Maybe I should actually give it the time of day. Sometimes I would look over Sam's shoulder when he was reading The Hobbit for like the 10th time and think, I just can't get this. I can't understand quite what's going on, although I have enjoyed the movies. So maybe I need to try and become a bit of a convert and give it a bit more time. But I do want to use a story from one of the movies, which is also in the book, obviously, as a hook for the conversation we are going to have today. We're going to talk about a story from The Hobbit with Bilbo and Gandalf and how it's full of wisdom for us as we're thinking about pursuing our purpose and some ways we want to live. So let me set the scene and bear with as we go through this together and get some actual practical points out of this story. So if you've never read The Hobbit or you've never watched the movies, it's all still going to make sense. Don't worry about it. Bilbo Baggins is a hobbit. Okay, hobbits are small, furry feety, they're cozy, they love their home comforts, and they like things to be as they are. They love a bit of plan, they love a bit of routine, and they like things to be as they know them. So first of all, you might relate to that. You might think, yeah, I'm a bit like a hobbit. I like my routine. I like the way things are. I like my cozy. I like my home. And actually, Bilbo wants nothing more than to just be in that space, in a comfort zone. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be in your comfort zone. There are times and seasons where the comfort zone is exactly where we should be. We shouldn't be constantly outside of our comfort zone because, quite frankly, that would be exhausting. So that's Bilbo. That's what Bilbo lives like, okay? In his lovely little hobbit home. And then entering his world is Gandalf. So Gandalf, if you've never seen him, he's a wise, slightly mischievous wizard, big beard, big long hair, very wizardy looking. And he, interestingly, can see something in Bilbo that nobody else has noticed, including Bilbo himself, okay? So what happens is Gandalf is recruiting Bilbo for an adventure. He wants him to come with him along with a whole group of dwarves. The dwarves are like feisty and bolshy and, good and up for everything. But they need Bilbo to come with them. And Bilbo doesn't want to go. That's the catch. So the dwarves are all up for this and they really need this mission to take place. And Gandalf wants Bilbo, but Bilbo doesn't want to do it. He's never been on an adventure. He's never done anything like this. He doesn't see that he's brave or strong. And actually, he'd quite like to stay at home where it's all nice and safe and nice and predictable. Does that sound familiar? The dwarves are sceptical. Nobody wants Bilbo to go. Bilbo doesn't think he has it in him. The dwarves don't think he has it in him. And Bilbo doesn't even sure if he wants to do it anyway. But then Gandalf says something that when I was watching the film, it made me sit up and pay attention to. And he turns to Bilbo and he turns to the dwarves and he says, he's got a great deal more to offer than any of you realise, including himself. And Gandalf was right. As the story goes on, there is so much more to Bilbo than Bilbo realised, than the dwarves realised, than any of us realise. This home comfort creature that likes things to be as they are and is a little bit frightened of stepping out and a little bit frightened of change had so much more in him. And when I heard that phrase, and we were watching it, I wrote it down and thought, this is something to think about. This is something to come back to. I love this. I love this moment of kind of calling out in Bilbo a bit more of who he is. And I thought it'd be good for us to take a few principles from that story and think, what does that look like for us? You might feel a bit like a Bilbo. You might feel like, I don't really know my worth, and actually neither does anybody else. You might need a Gandalf, and we're going to pick out some of these thoughts together and explore it together, okay? So the first thing I want you to think about is the difference between facts and the truth. Right, that might sound a bit funny because you might think, well, they're exactly the same thing. But I don't think they totally are exactly the same thing. We might count ourselves out of a situation because of what we see are the facts. We're not experienced enough. We're not old enough. We're not young enough, or we're not brave enough. We're too outspoken. We're too quiet, too loud, too clever, too funny, too risky, whatever it might be. There's a whole load of things that we might feel that are facts, okay, about who we are. And you might have your own list of those facts about who you are. Too busy, too tired, too old, too late, too inexperienced, whatever, too set in my ways. And we have these facts that we tell ourselves are facts, but maybe they're just things we've told ourselves. Maybe they're stories we've listened to. Maybe they're factual, like, yes, okay, maybe you haven't done that thing before. Maybe you are older. But my question is it the truth? There's a difference between truth and a fact. Facts inform us, but truths can actually transform us, because the truth is that you are more than all the experiences you've ever had. You are more than the way you see yourself. You have actually got way more courage than you realise. That is a definite fact. And you have capacity to do things that is much harder than you have ever given yourself credit for or predict for yourself. And I know those things are to be true, and I haven't even met you. I know those things to be true because they are universally true. That actually, when we face a hard thing, we find ourselves rising to that occasion. We just do it. We have to. Like, I think about that every time I'm about to go into a hard time. I remind myself and say, you can do this because of every other hard thing you've ever faced before, and also because you have to. And when I think about my experiences or lack of experiences, I recognise that's only part of who I am. I've got a unique personality. I've got a unique purpose. I've got a unique set of talents to bring to a situation. And I also think I've got more courage than I realise. And you've got to find that balance between being too safe or doing too much that's pushing yourself beyond the courage. A quick story here. Years ago, we went on holiday to France, where there is a unbelievably extensive rope. What they called, like monkey bar places, like a go ape, but that kind of thing in a much bigger scale, right by where we were staying. And of course, my kids who love that kind of thing wanted to go, and they'd been without me in the past, and they'd also been with me when I'd not particularly got involved. And I decided this one year that I was going to go for it with them, and I was going to go through this whole. There were 10 levels to the sort of rope. I can't really think what they're called. Why can't I think of the word? Like high ropes. That's the word, high ropes. So there were kind of 10 levels to the high ropes. And being France and being perhaps a little bit more laissez-faire with health and safety, I'm not kidding you, levels 7, 8, 10 were quite something else. So we did the first few levels, and I don't like heights. That's the piece of information you need to know. I actually just do not enjoy heights. The older I get, the worse I get. If I find myself on a balcony or something, I just want to lie on the floor because I think I might just throw myself off, or I just do not like the feeling of being high up. When we are anywhere on a cliffside or anything, me and my kids and Sam, the same conversation happens where one of them, Sam usually, will start a conversation around what might happen now if one of us fell, or what would we do and how would we save ourselves. And I hate those conversations and just feel literally sick inside. So we're at this rope swing, and I'm thinking I'm going to do it with them. And we got all the way up to about level 7, and at that point it was starting to get really hard. And what I'm telling you this story for is that I had a decision to make in terms of like my courage levels. And when we got to number 9, I actually thought it was the last one. So we did number 9, and I'm trembling, and I'm really, really high up, and I've done something that has really pushed me beyond my comfort zone. And then I thought, I've done it. Oh my goodness me, I've completed this thing. And then we realised that actually I've only got to level 9 and there's a level 10. And level 10 absolutely broke me. It was climbing the side of a bridge, okay, like on the outside of a bridge, and then going up and over. And then you did a strip, what's it called? When you go on a zip line. Then you did a zip line, a very long zip line right the way back to the start over the water. And I didn't realise that was number 10. And as I'm scaling the outside of this bridge, my legs and my arms are like jelly. I am absolutely paralysed. I'm actually beginning to cry a little bit. And the only reason that I managed to do the whole thing, and to be honest, the zip wire was really easy compared to that it was the fact that felt like I was free fall, was because I had people around me really encouraging me to do it. Now, probably, if I'd had the chance to build up to it and we'd had the opportunity, I probably should have stopped at level 9, and level 10 was probably a bridge too far. Lol, no pun intended, because sometimes we can go too far with these things. And I was pretty broken afterwards and I really cried. I was really proud of myself for going a lot further, but it was a bit too far. Now, my reasoning telling you all this is, I was able to do that hard thing and I was able to do something, and I am not what you'd call a massively courageous person. So the point I'm saying in all this is I realised from that whole episode that I am more courageous than I realise, and so are you. Don't push that courage to the outer limits, because then what can happen is you go, no way, I'm never going near a high rope ever again, which is kind of how I feel. You've got to push it to the right amount of courage so that we can come back to it again. So the first point in all of that was to just remind you that the facts about who you are not the total truth. There is more to you than you realise. You are not the sum total of your experiences. You have more courage than you realise, and you have capacity to do much harder things than you can possibly predict. I can't believe I did that. And if I can find you the photograph, I will find it and I'll pop it on Instagram, because it was a pretty challenging thing for me as a non-heights person. So the next thing I want us to think about is the power of a Gandalf. Now, even in the words I'm saying to you right now, I'm hoping that plays a little bit of a Gandalf role in your life. But I'm somebody that you're listening to over the airwaves or over YouTube. So it's not quite the same as having somebody right there with you. But we need people in our life that help us hear the truth. So I've told you about the difference between facts and truth, but we need somebody who speaks that out. Gandalf played a role in Bilbo's growth because he could see in him what Bilbo could not see. And we all need the power of a Gandalf person in our life. We need people who come alongside us and they can see beyond the here and now. They can see the potential in who we are. They can speak truth when all we can see is our limitations and our doubts. Now, who do you have in your life who plays that role? That's a question I want you to think about. Who's coming to mind as you're listening to me talk? Is anybody coming to mind? Is it a family member? Is it a loved one? Is it your boss? You might be fortunate enough to have a Gandalf like that in your workplace. Is it a really good friend who does that? I can think of a few people that have acted in that role in my life. As I stop and think about it, I've got some people to be really grateful for who have seen way beyond my actual natural circumstances and seen so much more potential in me. And I'm not talking about blind encouragement. That's like just being a cheerleader. So Adam Grant talks about you can be a critic, a cheerleader, or a coach. And Gandalf is like this wise coach. A critic just shows you all the things that you've got to do better. It's easy to be a critic. It's easy to see what's falling short in someone or something. A cheerleader can go the other way and just say, you can do it, you can be anything. That is not that helpful either, because you can't be anything. But a coach finds that space in between where they can see who you really are and wants to see more of that come about. So you need to find people in your life that find that balance. You know, my mom kind of falls into the cheerleader category, and I do need her for that. She's like, yeah, of course you can. You can be or do anything you want to. And it's a little bit blind, and it comes without any kind of filter. And then you've got other people who can just see why you can't do it, and they want to keep you where you are. They want to keep you thinking small or less of yourself. But the coach finds that space in between. And I would just say, it doesn't have to be a coach. I don't mean it's an actual coach, but finding people in your life that remind you that you can do hard things, not everything, that you're stronger and braver than you think you are, and that they will push you to step you out of your comfort zone. There's some things I'm doing this year, which I can't tell you about yet, but I will when I can, that certain individuals played the Gandalf for me and said, when are you going to do that? And kind of encouraged me towards it way before it was even remotely a possibility. and what difference that makes, what legacy that leaves for that person to be able to say, look, that came about because I was part of the encouragement to make it happen. And so we need somebody like that. And if you don't think you've got that, I would encourage you to seek it out. Find a way to add that to your life if it's not there at the moment. Find a mentor, find a coach, get involved in a space where you can have some coaching, or speak to some individuals that you respect and see as wise, and think about asking them to play that role for you a little bit. But there's a flip side to this, and the flip side is that we need to be a Gandalf for other people as well. So for this to work in like all across humankind, we all need a Gandalf, and we all need to be a Gandalf. That is my challenge to you, okay? My challenge is that you need that encouragement, but you need to find somebody that you're giving it to. My company is called Hello Sidekick. And the reason it's called that is because we believe our job at Sidekick is to come alongside people as a sidekick, helping them be everything they can be. But the second half of that is that we also believe that everybody needs to be a sidekick for somebody else's potential to come about. So it's this be a sidekick and get a sidekick. And actually Gandalf is a sidekick. Gandalf comes alongside the hero Bilbo and brings that about. And everybody needs somebody that plays that role in their life, and everybody needs to be that for someone else. So my question to you is, who are you doing it for? If you would like that in your life, who are you doing it for? There is always somebody who is going ahead of you, and there's always somebody who is behind you. So I said in another podcast episode about how I've got people who have been down the parenting journey ahead of me that I talk to, but also I've got friends now. I've got a little godson called Solomon, and his mum and dad I know are looking to me to play that Gandalf role to them. Warts and all, I can give them some help with that in the same way people did that for me. And who are you being Gandalf for? Who in your life is in that hobbit hole? Who in your life is sitting in that cozy space at the moment, and they just need you to say, do you know what? I think you can do this. I think you've got a bit more in you. Stop settling. I think it's time to stretch for something. Go for it. Go for that role. Go for that. Tell that person you love them, whatever it might be, bringing about courage in who they are that they don't have, and speaking the truth to them when all they've got in front of them is the facts. Who can you do that for? Because it's an absolute joy and the best legacy you can possibly leave, for you to be reminding someone of the courage they've got and their potential. And the last thing I kind of want to say in terms of key points here is to choose the adventurous route. And I don't think you should do that all the time, but I do think we need to learn to choose the adventurous route and wonder what might happen if it actually works out. One of the things I do, as I'm sure you know, is as well as the Purpose Pursuit podcast, we've got the Purpose Pursuit course. And people who engage on that are often people who are looking for courage. They know they're at that moment where they can either choose to stay as it is, or they can choose a different option. And they come on the course because they want those people around them that are going to encourage them, but they also have some personal choices to make that only they can make. Only Bilbo could choose to actually join the adventure. He can have all the help around him, but he's got to choose. And people who come on the Purpose Pursuit are almost putting themselves on the clock to make that choice, something that's going to look different and is adventurous in their life. And I'm not here to tell you what adventurous looks like. For some people, adventurous looks like upping sticks and selling your house and going to live on the other side of the world. For other people, adventurous looks like staying put and doing something that looks like you are you're taking the current route, but actually what you're doing is really brave because you're choosing to stick at something for a greater purpose, because that's what's needed of you right now. For other people, the adventurous route might be that you start a bit of a side hustle, something that you're doing alongside your work. For other people, the adventurous route is applying for that job that you haven't got 100% of the qualifications for, but you're going to give it a go and risk not getting through to the next round. Whatever adventurous looks like for you, you'll know what that limit is. And we don't all have to have the same kinds of adventures. There's something really brave, about not going and upping sticks and moving to the other side of the world. It's all brave if you're doing it with that courageous heart. But what I want to encourage you to do is to say yes to that adventurous route. Safe and comfortable is important at times, but comfort zones aren't where we grow. They are important for recouping, for rest, and for enjoying the space that we're in. But we aren't going to grow there. We've got to step back into that space again. And, I'm reflecting on that. Where am I bobbing along, and where do I need to push myself out of my comfort zone in all the different areas of my life? And I definitely can't push myself out of the comfort zone in all areas at the same time. So where is it time to choose comfort, and where is it time to choose a bit more risk and a little bit more adventure? And I'd encourage you to think back on any previous adventure you've been on. I'm thinking about when Sam and I had Noah, and he was 6 months old, and we made a massive life decision at that point to move on to a housing estate in Birmingham and begin to work with young people and their families on this estate that had quite a lot of significant need. And we didn't know what we were doing, and Sam was going to set up a charity, and we'd never set one up before. We had a mortgage to pay, and it was a really risky time for us in lots of ways. It may not have looked that risky to the outside world, but it was really risky and adventurous. We were in our 20s with a new baby, without guaranteed income and very little experience, but we decided we would give it a go. And I look back now, and even as I'm talking to you, I'm reflecting on how hard that was at times, but also how much I grew. And the reality is, we can't grow if we aren't pushing ourselves to do something that feels a bit more adventurous. Think back over your own track record and think about all those. You've got your own stories of tough times you faced. You've got your own stories of times when you chose something adventurous, and remind yourself that you did it and that you can definitely do it again. So as we wrap up today, and as we kind of move on from this episode, I just want to round up on those key things that we've talked about. Don't let the facts get in the way of the truth. Facts are the situation. The truth is transformational. Gosh, that sounds like a little jingle. Find your Gandalfs. Find the people who can see your potential, who can see past now and encourage you to your next steps. Be a Gandalf. Find the people who need your voice, who need your encouragement, your wisdom, your experience, and remind them of their strengths, remind them of their purpose, remind them of who they are. Say yes to the adventurous route, knowing that that path that's less travelled is the one that it just brings so much reward and so much growth and so much excitement. And there is growth waiting the other side of making that choice every single time. And that there is so much for us to learn from Middle Earth. Who knew? Who knew that we could actually get this much from a little interaction in a book that I haven't even read? So maybe I'm going to make it my resolution that I'll read The Hobbit this year. I'll come back to you on that one. And opening and broadening our horizons to take some gold from a little story about somebody simply saying to another person that you've got a great deal more to offer than anybody realises, including yourself. Thanks for spending time with me today. If you've enjoyed this episode, can I encourage you to do a couple of things? Share it with somebody that you think could really do with listening to it. Follow us on Instagram if you don't already, or any of the platforms. It's Hello Hannah Miller. And subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're listening, or make sure that you are saving the podcast if you are listening to it on the podcast apps. If you've got time to leave a review, it makes a massive difference. We've had some lovely reviews, but all of that helps other people find the podcast. So if you want to be a bit of a Gandalf to me, I would really encourage you to leave some feedback, because it's really helpful to be encouraged, and it's really helpful in terms of getting it out there. Podcasts grow because people who enjoy it tell other people about it. So if you can do something with this episode or any other episode you've enjoyed, I'd really encourage you to do that, please. And remember, your purpose is worth stepping out of the comfort zone for. You've got an adventure waiting for you. There's another season coming with new adventures. Keep going. And I look forward to seeing you next time.